Welcome to the Who Anime Podcast. Hope you enjoy listening. Hello, welcome to the Who Anime Podcast. I'm Lobokendo, your host, and my co-host with me is...
I'm Astiel. Hello.
And today, as our first episode, we will be covering an anime that I believe is quite good. The anime Poelemegi Madoka Magica, or in Japanese, Mahou Shoujo Madoka Magica. Today, our guest is Andrew.
Hello.
And the way I decided to set up this podcast is every podcast we will have a new guest. And every guest we bring in will be somebody new to the anime in question. So if you're looking for a first impression of an anime that might be old, might be new, this might be the place to come check it out. First off, we're going to start talking about how we first got into anime. Astiel, would you like to start?
Well, the first anime that I just sat down and watched at length in like a span of 2 days was Attack on Titan. This was a couple years ago. How I got into anime as a whole, like as a medium, is I told Lobo about it, and he started showing me a whole new world, as it were.
I watch far too much anime, but generally what I tend to watch is whatever interests me, which has led me to watch hundreds and hundreds of different anime. So, yeah, I watch too much. I started watching... I think the first anime that I ever watched when I was aware of what anime was, I mean, sure, anybody could say like Pokemon or Digimon or something like that, Sailor Moon even, but the first anime that I watched that I was aware I was watching anime was Inuyasha. Definitely Inuyasha. And after that, I just kept seeking out more anime and eventually got me to here. So, Andrew, what got you first into anime?
Well, I don't know. I know that I spent a lot of time watching Adult Swim when I was younger, watching like Fullmetal Alchemist, Cowboy Bebop, those kind of animes on there. But the anime that I first really sunk my teeth into was, I kind of regret this, but it was Naruto. And I spent far too much time watching Naruto, and
There's nothing wrong with watching Naruto.
there's nothing wrong with watching Naruto. It's just
It's Naruto,
the amount
at
of
the very
time...
least, Naruto ended better than Bleach. Yeah, Bleach not Bleach did. Bleach died.
Yeah, Bleach died. But yeah, I watched Naruto around that same time. I started watching Bleach, and I watched Death Note, and that's kind of when I started really getting into anime. And yeah, I've been a pretty big fan ever since.
Okie dokie. So now let's talk about the big thing, Madoka Magica. What did you think about it?
Oh boy.
Indeed. Wait, first we should talk about how the storyline of Madoka starts, I imagine. So, for anybody who doesn't know, the story of Madoka Magica is one day after waking up from a strange dream, Madoka Kaname goes to school, and there's a transfer student, and she gives, after meeting her, she gives, the transfer student Homura gives Madoka a cryptic message saying, if you love the way your life is right now, don't change anything. Of course, later down the road, she gets involved in strange things and eventually pretty much disregards what Homura said. And that leads us into the story, which is a magical girl anime. Although one unlike most, to say the least.
By the way, this is a discussion podcast, so if for some reason you haven't seen the anime, you should probably go watch it before going any further. You should back out now.
Spoiler alert. We will be discussing spoilers, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, we will.
Maybe we should like go over our general thoughts on the anime without spoilers first, so that somebody
perhaps. That's probably a good idea. So I'm gonna go last because I have the most thoughts. So Andrew, why don't you start?
All right. Well, going into it, I kind of had an idea of what Madoka Magica was. I knew that it wasn't going to be like a normal, oh, Sailor Moon, go stop the bad guys type anime. But getting into it, like once I got to episode 3, when stuff started happening, I kind of started really getting into the plot and the story of the anime, and it kind of, I don't know, it was good. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Episode 3 definitely can grab you in a very visceral sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it can.
Astia, what did you think of Madoka?
Uh, well, Andrew mentioned, uh, like first thoughts, or I, I've already forgotten the exact wording, but uh,
Before you
if I remember
watched it,
correct,
what were
yes,
your...
if I remember correctly, the first time I watched it, I mostly went into it blind. I knew it existed, but I didn't know at all what to expect. And it was certainly a surprise in many ways.
Indeed.
Uh,
I, for myself, personally, how I first got into it was I went in completely blind. After I had heard, hey, this is a cool thing, I was like, I like cool things, I'll watch this. And then, yeah, I had a very violent and interesting reaction to it. And that is where we're going to cut it off for spoilers. So now we're going to discuss spoilers. Because,
I think unanimously we recommend the anime, right?
yeah, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, unanimously recommend it. If
yes,
you
yes.
if you have to quote a reviewer that I am quite a fan of, if you have any interest in what anime can accomplish in an art form, watch it. What
Those are
anime
some
can...
pretty big words.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty big anime.
Mm.
Anyway, so spoilers. What did you think about it?
Ah. Hmm.
What did I think about the plot?
Okay, so do we want to go into in general? So, like, what did you think about just... Okay, let's talk... What did you think about the art that they used in it? Specifically the witch labyrinths.
Yes.
I loved the Witch Labyrinths. The art, like, oh my God, it was so great to see that kind of art style in an anime. Because, like, usually anime is so kind of by the numbers, you like paint by the numbers kind of thing, where it's the same throughout and there's just not really any variance or any kind of stylistic
Or if there
choices to it.
if there is any variance, it's that less tense, less casual scenes aren't as animated as, say, action scenes or sequences.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like there's a like with most anime, there's a discrepancy in when people are talking rather than when they're fighting. But for Madoka Magica, like whenever they're in the witch labyrinths, it's a completely different world.
Art
And
medium.
yeah,
Yes.
it's crazy.
It's
and I
like
love it.
pastel colors
E-
and
each
like
each
trippy...
different labyrinth is an adventure unto itself.
Each like
As
every
far as
single
the art
labyrinth
style.
has its own unique art style. One of my personal favorite art styles is the final witch that Sayaka beats before unfortunate circumstances happen to Sayaka. Which is
the
basically...
silhouettes.
Yeah, the like black
Yeah.
silhouettes with like the only color being red blood. Like
Yes,
that was
that was
just...
great. I liked that one a lot. That was one of my favorites by far. But like the first one I liked a lot too because it kind of seemed like it was pieces of paper cut out, and it was
Mhm.
like they were layered on top of each other, and they were all kind of moving individually of each other.
yeah, but at
I
the
don't
same
know. It
time
was
they were
really
Yeah,
cool.
animated too.
it was kind of beautiful, but also very unsettling at the same time.
Yeah,
and
and I
it-
think that worked
it
really
worked-
well for.
Yeah, it worked really well for the first Witch Labyrinth, especially because it was, yes,
It was
it was very
supposed to be-
distinct.
Yeah, it was supposed to be unsettling. It was like, this is what it should look like. Like, no, this, like, kind of like, it tried to have the sort of moe art style that it had in the, like, normal world, and then mix that with the like, really like you're saying, the paper cutout kind of stuff art. That
Yeah, and that was
just
something else that I enjoyed was the how the general art style was very moe and very like generic, well, not generic, but like very obviously magical girl anime, and then you have not only the dark tones of the plot, but then the crazy art
Uh,
like style of the witch
well,
labyrinths, and it was great. I liked it a lot.
mhm.
actually, for me at least, even the like normal everyday nothing is dying yet and nothing is on fire and
Was still
art
kind
style,
still kind of unsettling.
not unsettling. It was unique in the way that it looked both drawn and animated at the same time. Like the eyes have uh, had pencil marks and things like that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
and
kind
the
of.
way that they had kind of that extra line around the jaw and like
Mhm.
around like the edges of the character's face, kind of I'm
We
not
might
sure
be
how to
getting a bit
word it, but it
too
was
specific.
I
Yeah.
don't know, it was really cool. I
Yeah.
liked it a lot.
Yeah.
Another bit. It's just I want to talk about another art thing that's a bit different, and that would be the camera angles and the backgrounds in the real world, not the witch labyrinths, which I thought was also done incredibly well. And to name a specific scene, the scene in I think it's episode 4 where it's Madoka who kind of goes to talk to Homura, and then they start walking down a street, and like you just get like weird odd camera shots where you have like the background not only behind them but also in front, kind of blocking view of them as they walk through it. And it's just like I thought it's just like really effective in that scene where it's like you're not seeing them, you're seeing the background. And honestly, that's just Shaft as a
Mhm.
studio does that, and they do it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. One thing about animation that I would like to touch on, it's very small, but in the especially in the first episode, whenever there's a close up of of characters' hands, it's animated like impressively well. I mean, I'm an artist for those of you at the podcast who are listening to the podcast that might not know, but the hands in this anime are animated like incredibly well, and I just wanted to give Shaft some praise for that.
Actually, yeah, I didn't particularly realize that, but now that you pointed out, I can remember instances of that. Like the hands look like their
Real
hands.
hands.
They
The
move properly and shit.
the only other studio that I can imagine would top them in it would be Kyoto Animation, but they're just KyoAni is just excellent at animating everything about anything. They'll do they can make like a scene where there's no reason for the characters' bodies to be moving. They could easily just make them standing completely still, but they'll have them making unique body movements, and it's all really great. But that's besides the point. So that's the art. What did you think of the voice acting? In specifically the sub, because we're not going to cover the dub. We'll just say the dub could have been better, but it was still really good. So, what did you think of the voice acting?
I thought it was good overall. There weren't any specific characters that bothered me. Usually in like especially with this kind of anime where like they're all super duper moe anime girls, usually there's at least one character that bothers me, but nobody has stood out as really annoying me.
Yeah, SDL, your thoughts on the voice acting?
I can't say I have any complaints really. uh, yeah, I didn't have any problems with it. I I'm not sure if I'm qualified to say if anything.
No, you
Or
don't have to say anything about it
yeah,
necessarily. I'm just saying, like, yeah, good, pass, go.
yeah.
Yeah. Overall, I guess I mean it was effective. It worked.
Hmm.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked about. Oh, I guess the background music is the thing.
Ah, yes.
By the way, I'm intentionally
Fantastic.
intentionally waiting to cover the storyline last. But yeah,
As
the-
you should, because that's a very big it's a very big thing.
yeah,
Yes.
But yeah, the music was fantastic. I specifically really love the ending theme, which they also kind of use as like fighting music. Like
Mhm.
it's fantastic.
I'm
really enjoyed
actually
it.
thinking about. I'll say it later, but yeah, definitely
But-
really good.
By the way, on the subject of the ending, for the animation at least, if if anyone is
Oh yeah,
curious
it's
or didn't know,
interesting a thing about the animation if you ever watched it, but like during the thing, and of course we're referring to Magia,
Yes. Yes.
the darker ending theme as things got serious. Basically, you have the silhouette of Madoka walking down a corridor, and as she's walking, you see silhouettes of all the main magical girls. And after every single one of them, basically they're just stills kind of moving by as Madoka walks by. But when she gets to Homura turns and looks at Madoka and then tries to catch her as she walks by, and Homura's the only one to notice Madoka walking by.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really
That's neat. I didn't even pick up on that.
It's just one of the.
It's just a nice
quite-
touch in the ending animation.
It's one of the many little details that's nice that you wouldn't necessarily notice or care about on your first watch of it.
Yeah. Anyway, so now it's time to talk about the story.
Oh boy, where do we start? Where should we start?
Let's start with giving a sort of we could sort of give a synopsis of what happens in the storyline, like a generic synopsis. Just because I think it's necessary to talk about specific parts of it, because even if somebody's seen it before, they might not know the exact moment we're talking about. So if we at least like have a generic timeline. So basically, Madoka meets Kyubey, and Kyubey wants Madoka to become a magical girl, but she's kind of on the fence about it until what happens in episode 3, which, since she's been going around into witch labyrinths with Mommy, and she's actually just about decided to become a magical girl, Mommy meets with an unfortunate fate, you could say. Would you like to elaborate on that, Andrew?
Me? Well, for those who maybe play League of Legends, you probably know of the champion known as Cho'Gath. Just picture him using his ultimate on Mommy's face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
nom nom.
Yes.
Nom.
Well, yes. For that bit, I was particularly amused on how the witch's room, as it were, was effectively mocking them.
Because everything was a bunch of cakes, and
Yep.
Mommy had just said, "Well, why don't, if you can't think of anything, then just wish for a cake."
Yes.
Yeah, but the one thing that I wish they had done a little bit differently in that scene was I kind of wish that they had actually full on shown Mommy's demise, because it's censored in a way that it's like cut off right below where everything is happening. I feel like it would have been a bit more effective.
But
For me, at least,
the
to
show
show
never
it
wanted, like,
that-
the show was never trying to be, like, it was trying to be visually inspired, not visually graphic.
Yeah.
Right, and I understand that. It's just, I feel like I would have felt the gravity of it a little bit more, because, I don't know, seeing her body dangling was, I mean, it's obvious she's dead. I just feel like it would have been more effective for me personally if I had gotten to, well, it sounds like I'm excited to see this now, but if I had seen what the monster had done, I feel like it would have been, I would have bought
I can
everything a little
understand
bit
that,
more.
but I believe that's just that, of course, it's just an opinion. Just like
Yes.
everything on this podcast. But personally, I think it was done excellently. I think not showing it directly made it, at the very least, you could question, like it was supposed to be, like, the way that you feel, like, no, like, you when you saw it happen. I know the thing that ran through my head, don't know if it ran through your guys, was, no, that didn't just happen. What?
Another thing I want.
That didn't just happen.
Another thing I want to note for that is that Mommy's soul gem was on her headpiece.
Yeah, I pointed that out to Asio earlier.
Oh, okay, that makes okay.
What- that's-
see, that was one thing that I wasn't sure about because
Like, why did that kill her? Because later in
Yeah.
the series, you find out when magical girls can't really be killed unless it's their soul gem that's destroyed. But yes, Mommy when she transforms, her soul gem is part of her hair.
Okay, that clears that up for me. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, there's a lot that I can probably explain away if you have a problem with this, because like I will just again say now, and I'll say it at the end, but Madoka Magica, while it will never make it onto my favorites list, it is, I believe it is the best anime I have ever seen, and I will defend it to the death. It's not my favorite though, because I like happy stories, and this most certainly is not.
Mm-hmm.
And while we talk about how unhappy the story is, let's talk about where the story goes after Mommy's demise. Astiel, would you like to say what happens after that?
Right, so
I'll interject if you make a mistake.
I'm trying to remember
Are
the...
you expecting him to make a mistake?
He should, but because I'm trying to recall the direct flow of events after that.
Okay, well then I'll cover it.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is Sayaka goes back to the hospital where her childhood friend who used to play violin is. And you see, and in the previous episode you saw that he apparently was in an accident of some kind and has lost the use of his hand forever, so he'll never play violin again. What Sayaka wants to do is she's thinking about using her wish to heal him, but at the same time she's worried about dying, because she just saw that that's a very real outcome that can happen if you become a magical girl.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
while you see that you see like her inner turmoil in a few scenes, you also get the scene of Madoka talking to Homura, and Homura saying like you should like magical girls are just like don't, now you know why I was saying not to do this, just don't. And but after talking to Homura, Madoka heads home, and she sees her friend, who apparently is under the influence of a witch, and she, among others, and a bunch of people are about to commit suicide in a warehouse. And Madoka tries to stop them, and then she gets trapped, and eventually ends up in a witch's labyrinth. But she does get saved by Sayaka, because she made the decision finally to become a magical girl.
Yeah, can I interrupt you real quick?
Sure.
That like one shot where Madoka is being like ripped apart, going into the
that's another
witch,
really good witch labyrinth moment.
witch labyrinth. That I thought she was dead for a little bit. I was just like, oh, goodbye, main character, you're gone.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, but Madoka is a bit better written than that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but it was a jarring moment, and I
yeah,
enjoyed
definitely.
it,
If you don't know, you would just, what's going on? Ah.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Since we're talking about Sayaka right now, I think she's probably, to me at least, probably either the best or the second best character in the show.
I would agree with that if. Okay, so if you're talking about how well characters are written, I would say yes, she is the second best written character. The first being Homura.
Yeah, that was those two are definitely my favorites. Like,
but of course, the reasoning behind it is, Mommy only has 3 episodes, really. Like, she does have a bit to say at the end of the series, but yeah, she only really gets 3 episodes. And Kyoko doesn't get introduced until the end of episode 4, where you see that she's talking about Sayaka becoming a magical girl and how she wants to teach her a lesson, more to put it kindly. And she also ends at this really about not an episode after Sayaka ends, so she actually has less screen time than Sayaka. And Madoka, well, a good character, is still not an interesting one because she's just a normal girl. Like,
yeah, and I have other
bad
issues
stuff
with Madoka, but we can talk about that later.
No, that's
But
that's fine.
Sayaka, I feel like she has the most obvious character arc, and she has a lot going on. Like, she starts out in the first episode kind of being the comedic relief character, and then she becomes, in a way, the darkest of the characters for a bit.
And then there's a really good scene I want to
shift.
discuss about Sayaka. There's a really good scene I want to discuss, but we'll get to that later.
Which scene? Oh, we're going to get to it? Okay.
Yeah, we'll get... I want to go through stuff in... Like, we can talk about super specific things after we're done the synopsis, but... Yeah, so... Okay, so Kyoko picks a fight with Sayaka, and Madoka is unhappy that that is going on. She's wondering why they should fight, because they're both magical girls. They should be fighting for justice. And but Homura intervenes and saves Sayaka, more or less. And then you find out about a bit of a subplot between Homura. Apparently, there is some mega witch that is going to show up in a few weeks, and Homura is looking for help in fighting it, and she tries to ask Kyoko for help, and Kyoko seems like she's willing to help. But what happens then? Okay, so basically, I believe Madoka talks to Homura again, and Homura basically says you should give up on Sayaka. She became a magical girl. There's nothing you can do for her anymore. And
yeah, pretty much. And I think Sayaka starts her downward spiral around then.
A little bit, because she's basically starts arguing with Madoka, because Madoka's like, you shouldn't be fighting Kyoko, and she's like, do you think we're just fighting? We're trying to kill each other. This isn't just a fight, right? And eventually, Madoka, after having a conversation with her mother, decides that she's going to stop Sayaka by force. And to do that, she takes away her soul gem, which is the source of her magical powers, or so we are led to believe, and throws it off of a bridge.
Yes.
And then we find out another one of the fun moments.
Yes, and then one of the reveals, in that magical girls are not the bodies, they're the soul gems. They can only words. They can only they can only control the shell, as it were, within 100 meters.
A revelation which is made evident by Kyubey, who is the adorable mascot character for the Madoka Magica series.
I hated that little demonic furball from his first line. Legitimately, I didn't like him from his first line in the show. Like, I knew there was something wrong with him.
Make a contract with me and become a magical girl.
Mm-hmm.
He was so pushy. He was so adamant. I was like, dude, back off.
Yeah, but
yeah, I did not like him.
To be fair, he's less pushy about it at the beginning. Like, I mean, okay,
well,
the first scene he's pushy, but
still the way that it was worded, I was just like,
it's clearly manipulative.
Yes,
he's clearly saying what he needs to say to get them to do what he wants them to do. But at the same time, you cannot after the reveal about magical girls, everybody is, of course, upset about it, because we're dead already then? In fact, to quote a thing that's said repeatedly, we're zombies, basically. Yes. They say that quite frequently. But anyway, basically Kyubey's logic is, if I had told you, you wouldn't have made the contract. Because for some reason, humans are so attached to their physical forms. I don't really understand that, because the physical form is just a place for you to keep your souls. But if you die in that physical form, your soul is lost. So I made it easier for you to stay safe. You should be thanking me. And that is what starts Sayaka's downward spiral.
Yes.
Because Sayaka believed that after she used her wish to, and of course the wish is, becoming a magical girl requires you to make a wish. Sayaka's wish was to heal her childhood friend that she is in love with. However, after this revelation that she finds out that she's already dead, to put it in the way that she was looking at it. Actually, I wouldn't have looked at it that way. I'm a bit more pragmatic than that. I actually like that aspect of it. But that aside, she believes that how could she ask Kamijo, that's the boy's name, to love him when she's not even alive anymore? So then her best friend, Madoka and Sayaka's friend, says, I actually like him too, but I know that you also like him, so I'm going to give you a chance to confess to him before I do. Because I don't want there to be any ill will between us. And then, of course, that just starts Sayaka on a further downward spiral, because she gets really, angry, despair sets in. Why wouldn't it? And
There's that word,
Andrew,
despair.
yes, despair. That's a very good word for this show. But Andrew, would you like to take it from there?
No, I think you're doing a good job. I mean,
Okay.
I know for a fact that I would mess something up with the plot. So,
Okay, so what happens after that, and of course there is still in the back. I will say in the background because I think it is important for us watching the show. Like if you're watching for the first time, it is very important, which is the constant conversations Homura has with Madoka, because Homura is constantly giving perspective to Madoka on the things going on. Like, yes, I knew this horrible truth. That's why was saying what I'm saying, and Homura constantly repeats that, and so eventually Kyoko starts kind of gives a truce to Sayaka because Kyoko is also upset about this revelation that they're already dead, and because it turns out Kyoko made a similar wish to Sayaka. Kyoko also used her wish to try and benefit somebody else, and it also backfired on her just like it is now with Sayaka. So Kyoko tries to convince Sayaka to use her magic only for herself. But Sayaka, unfortunately, stubbornly refuses because she still believes in the justice of a magical girl. And after an argument in, I think it's a bus station. Just a second. I need to...
who's arguing?
Is it the one with Madoka?
Yes, the
During
argument.
the rain? Yes,
Yes.
it is a bus station.
Oh, yeah.
Or a bus stop, rather.
Yeah, it was a bus stop.
Yeah. So, and sorry, just a second. I need to put on a band-aid.
No dying on this podcast.
Yeah.
Especially not the first episode.
Yeah.
We're already covering Madoka on Christmas of all days.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many good Christmas imagery in it, isn't there?
Yeah, I just want a magical girl without her head under my tree, please.
Yes.
I'll take
I'm
two.
sure you could find a figurine of that. It exists. But anyway, so after an argument with Madoka at a bus stop, which Sayaka basically says to Madoka, "What do you know? You're not a magical girl. You don't know the problems that I'm having to deal with. You're not a zombie." Basically, Sayaka runs off, and then basically Homura then goes to talk to Sayaka and says, "You're making Madoka unhappy. You need to stop." And she tries to give her grief seed, which is a thing that removes the darkness from their soul gems. But Sayaka refuses because she's not willing to accept charity from anyone. And because of this, Homura says, "Well, then I'll just kill you. Because you're making Madoka upset. And I don't want Madoka to be upset."
I would like to say that I think it was probably more that that Homura and Kyoko were the last people she wanted to accept charity from. Not that she wouldn't from anyone.
Yes, but at the same time, I believe it was also anyone. Just because she was being too proud. She's like, "I can still fight. I can still handle this. I don't have a real life anymore. I will devote myself entirely to stopping witches." And then you have, which is one of my favorite scenes in the anime, which is Sayaka on a train, and she overhears a couple of guys' conversations. Do you remember this scene, Andrew?
Of course I remember this scene. I thought she was about to chop those dudes' heads off.
Well, see, you say think, but the thing is, they cut to black, and then they went into a different scene. Basically, they left it in question whether or not Sayaka actually did kill them. And honestly, if I had to honestly say, she did. She 100% did. Because of a specific line that Sayaka says earlier in the anime. And what she says is, this is when she's talking to Madoka about fighting Kyoko. And word for word, specifically what she says is, "I'll fight anyone worse than witches." Referring to, of course, Kyoko, but that could also be considered foreshadowing as those guys were clearly horrible guys, and it would make sense that if Sayaka said, "I'll fight anyone worse than witches," she killed them. And that is ultimately what led her soul gem to getting completely tainted. And then we get another reveal.
Dun dun dun.
Andrew,
Yes.
what reveal was it?
Well, you see, the thing about witches is they used to be magical girls. So, yeah.
And it turned, and then we get the reveal about why. Why is this happening?
Entropy.
Yes.
Okay, so the reason Kyubey is turning people into magical girls and then subsequently witches is because they're the entropy is basically when fuel is consumed, the energy produced is not equal to the amount of fuel that was conserved, and as such, the universe is dying. So to put it in terms people may or may not understand, it's the entropic decay of the universe is what we're talking about now. And
Big stuff.
yeah, and what Kyubey's the people who sent Kyubey are trying to save the universe, and the reason is because it turns out that emotions are a thing that only is unique to Earth. There are possibly no other planets that have people like of everybody living on it having emotions. And
Well, there are beings that have emotions,
they are
but they're
considered-
considered crazy people.
yeah, they're considered they have a mental illness. And but that's the reason I'm saying that is because that was only Kyubey's race. That wasn't all
Yeah.
races.
Well, actually, yeah.
And they did say that they just found Earth. They didn't say that that was the only one they found. That was the first one they found. But apparently emotions are a source of energy, and in fact, the point of somebody's utter joy turning to utter despair produces a massive amount of energy, and Kyubey's race sent him to collect that energy. So what Kyubey is trying to accomplish is saving the universe. And to do that, he is subjecting teenage girls to becoming magical girls and then turning all of their hopes into despair and using that as a fuel source for the universe. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that, Andrew?
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting that they decided to make a magical girl anime so ingrained with something that's kind of like a real thing and is kind of a serious. Well, I don't know if it's a real thing, but it's like a definitely
It's a scientific theory that does exist.
yeah, it's such a scientific theory for a magical girl anime. It's kind of an interesting blend there.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, Sayaka unfortunately becomes a witch, and it's at this point that Kyoko really wants to save Sayaka. She believes that there might be a chance that she could bring Sayaka back. And unfortunately, Kyubey says, I don't know, anything could be possible. I'm sure if you try hard enough, anything could happen. Of course, this is not true, and unfortunately, Kyoko ends up sacrificing herself to defeat Sayaka in the hope that it would save Sayaka. Unfortunately, not the case.
Which I kind of had a little bit of an issue with Kyoko in general, because she starts off when you first meet her, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat the crap out of her, maybe even kill her," and then she's like, "Oh, I want to save her." I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with
I mean,
you.
I kind of understand where they were going with that kind of arc, but I didn't feel like they sold it well enough.
I agree with you partly on that, but at the same time, I think it makes sense if you think about the fact that it isn't just Sayaka who is going through such amount of despair because of this. Kyoko was upset about it too. She was
Right.
And if it makes sense, like basically, Sayaka just became a magical girl, and Kyoko has been a magical girl for who knows how long. Long enough, apparently, to leave the city she grew up in and then to come back to it. Like, who knows how much time later, right? So, basically, she's looking at it like, basically, everything that Kyoko believes. Basically, Kyoko doesn't want to be alive anymore. is the way I would put it. Just because it's just the despair. Again, the good word for this show is despair, because that's exactly what happens. And basically, Kyoko believes in the faint hope that she can save Sayaka. And of course, a big theme in the show is hope turns to despair. And basically, so she ends up sacrificing herself in a last-ditch effort, because if she can't save Sayaka, her soul gem would most likely get corrupted, and she would become a witch too. So, as the only thing she could do, she sacrificed herself to try and save Sayaka. Because she just saw Sayaka as a earlier version of herself, and she just wanted something good to happen to her. So if it was like, if she could sacrifice herself to save Sayaka, she wanted to. And that's the way I look at it. So I didn't really have a problem with it. So then
I just thought it was kind of jarring, her character going from one end of the spectrum to another, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
It could have been a bit more well illustrated.
Yeah, that's definitely a way you could say that. But so after that, Homura starts talking to Madoka about things, and basically saying, I can handle this. I can defeat the Walpurgis Knight. I can defeat it on my own. And Madoka's like, no, I'll become a magical girl to help you. And then Homura suddenly freaks out and is like, no, why are you always trying to sacrifice yourself like this? And then you find, like, it's kind of out of nowhere, because Madoka was about to make a contract again with Kyubey, and Homura straight up kills Kyubey in what is, in my opinion, one of the most shocking moments in the entire anime. Just for, like,
I was like,
shock
wait,
value.
what?
Yeah,
it was, especially the way the body was after he died, because there were just huge holes in him.
Yeah,
just holes.
Pow, dead, and it's just like, oh god.
I was like, I didn't like him, but I didn't dislike him that much.
And then when he comes back, you're like, welp, I dislike him that much now. Do it again.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then he eats the corpse.
That was disgusting.
Anyway, then you get a flashback for Homura's story, and it turns out that Homura originally wasn't a magical girl. It was, in fact, Madoka who was a magical girl. And after the Walpurgis Knight attacked, everything changed when Walpurgis Knight attacked. Anyway,
yes.
So that's just what went through my head. I had to say it out loud. When that happened, and I would just like to say, for anybody still listening to the podcast, it'll probably be a lot shorter. Madoka just has an incredibly dense story. So
yeah,
other anime will probably go a lot faster than this. But, so, it turns out that Madoka was the magical girl, and Homura was the one who was the new person, and just the naive little girl. And Madoka eventually saves Homura, and then Walpurgis Night happens, and everybody is killed, and Homura makes the wish to become a magical girl to undo what has happened. And basically she goes back in time to when she first met Madoka. And then she's a magical girl, but then she still fails to save Madoka, and then she goes back in time again and fails to save Madoka.
That was definitely my favorite episode.
Yeah, that's probably the strongest episode in the entire thing, because up to this point you've had this enigmatic person who's just, why do you care so much, or why do you not care so much? It's like such a weird oxymoron, but it was true, right?
Yeah, and was that the episode where they kind of revealed that whatever your wish is tied to
your powers?
Your powers?
No,
wait, that was
Sayaka.
That was mentioned much earlier.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right.
Kyoko
like during the fight with
Sayaka.
Kyoko.
And then she got back up, and she was like, huh, that should have put you out of commission. And it was like, well, she made a wish to heal people.
Okay, yeah, that's right. I thought that was kind of a neat little thing that they did to tie things together. I thought that was really cool.
And which is why it makes sense what Mommy's wish was. Because among other, I believe this like the written storyline and the visual storyline were kind of different for Mommy. But like what it kind of looked like is she was dying in a car crash in the anime, but I believe that's not actually what it was. I believe it was she was an impoverished person. So basically, she wished to just be alive and to have the means to survive. So her ability is making things appear. Like she at several times she magically made tea appear. And that was just an ability she had. So she could conjure things because she wished for having stuff, basically.
And she had a very nice apartment.
Yeah.
Yes. It just happened to be that her preferred weapons were
Guns.
flintlocks
Yeah.
with weird crystal things in them.
And so yeah, that's the magical girl thing, and yeah, that is a cool touch. But interesting question I'll ask you, Andrew. What is your guess as to how many times Homura went through the time loop? Because Astiel and I know the actual answer, but I want to know.
There's an actual answer?
Yes, there is. It was stated by Staff of Shaft. Like, not an exact number, but approximately how many.
I'd probably guess in the 20s.
It was approaching 100 times.
Seriously?
Yeah, and the span of time that was over a month. So altogether, it equaled over 12 years. She was in that time loop for.
Wow.
Yeah.
That brings up one question.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't she age?
Because magical girls don't age.
Yeah.
Oh.
Remember, the magical girl isn't the body. The magical girl is the soul gem. That is the entity that is the magical girl.
Yeah.
The body is just a means to an end.
That makes sense.
But if you're talking about aging mentally, she most certainly did.
No. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, here, have 12 years of watching...
She started as more naive than Madoka.
Yeah.
And she ended up as hard-boiled badass.
Yes. I imagine 12 years of watching...
Your fans die.
Yes, people you care about deeply die.
And every time you try and save them, you only care about them more deeply.
Not only watching them die, but watching them do so in a slow, painful, drawn-out manner, like with Sayaka.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every single time, Sayaka just...
Sayaka
bad things happen.
End,
yes.
Especially the one where Homura saved Mommy and then reveals the truth, and then Mommy goes insane and starts killing everybody.
Yes.
Because
that was
if you guys are going to that makes sense too for her character, because she truly believes in the justice that she's doing. Like, she was the weird exception magical girl who believed in bringing people to justice and saving people. So if all of them were destined to become witches, she wanted to kill them because that made sense. And that is a horrible thing. And that's why Homura probably chose to tell Mommy to back off instead of actually saving her, because she knew how it would go if she actually saved her.
Yeah, one thing that I'd like to point out, though, is we're not really talking about Madoka at all.
Very true.
And that's one problem that I have with the show as a whole, is she's kind of just there existing while the plot is happening around her. She doesn't really do anything to drive the plot herself.
Yes.
Until like the last episode.
Until the last couple of episodes, Madoka is the protagonist. But after episode 10, which is Homura's episode, Homura is 100% the protagonist. Undeniably.
But the problem that I have is that the protagonist should be the one that's driving the plot.
But
and
technically, Homura really the entire time is driving the plot.
Yeah, Homura is driving the plot, but for the first several episodes, Madoka is supposed to be the protagonist.
We're seeing the plot through Madoka's eyes. But it is, in fact, Homura that is the protagonist the entire time.
Like, which makes sense at the end of the show, but while I'm watching the show, while I was watching the first 10 episodes or so, I was really kind of annoyed that the protagonist, who I was supposed to think was the protagonist anyway, wasn't really doing anything to forward the plot. It was just everybody was making
I,
decisions
I
around
think
her.
I think this is a
her
case.
indecision makes sense though, given everything going on. Like
It does.
another friend of mine who watched it. The thing he didn't like about the show is that he doesn't like watching girls cry, and there's a lot of girls crying in it. And my argument for that was they have legitimate reasons to be crying.
Yeah, it's true. It's just I kind of wish that the plot was like the story was written in such a way that Madoka was doing at least something rather than just sitting
Well, to be
there
fair,
watching stuff
she is the reason that the magical girls being the soul gems was revealed. She is the reason behind that. She is also the reason behind Sayaka getting fully corrupted, because she's constantly trying to stop Sayaka from fighting, which is actually pushing Sayaka further into despair, because it's driving Sayaka into a corner. Like, I'm not saying Madoka is driving the story in a good direction, but she is driving it in one.
I would like to say that this is a case of where, despite being the title character, this is a story that does not have the protagonist. It is a story with multiple protagonists.
Yes, I would say that's true. But
Yeah, and I would agree with that. It's just it's kind of it felt disingenuous to me to have her name in the show and then have her do so little in the show until the very last episode.
Yeah, she
but
is.
at the same time,
Yeah.
it makes sense thematically, because it would have been untrue. Like, it would have been untrue to every single thing that happened in the entire show if Madoka became a magical girl sooner. Because it would have been like,
I'm not
okay,
saying that she had to become a magical girl sooner. I'm just saying that I wish that she did more to drive the plot.
Yeah.
In
but I
general.
mean, she did stuff like the whole like in the warehouse saving the people from committing suicide. Like, she was there for that, and the whole, like, every time she's talking to Homura, that's like since you find out later about Homura, like Homura is like Homura loves Madoka, and that is like an important thing. Like, Madoka is Homura's emotional stability.
Yeah, but that's not really
It's
Madoka's,
you don't see
like,
it until
intentional
episode 10.
doing. It's just
Yeah.
it's just Madoka existing, and then Homura is the one that has all the stuff to do in because of that.
But again, like, I forgive it just because it, like, you're up until that point you're seeing it through Madoka, like the story through Madoka's eyes, because you're being introduced to these new concepts. If, say, the actually interesting thing, they're making more Madoka anime. In fact, there's even more that already exists. Madoka was made, the Madoka anime 12 episodes was made into a 3-episode movie, like 3-part movie. Damn, 3 movies. That's a better way to say it.
Yes.
And the first
Words
two
are hard sometimes.
the first 2 movies cover the first 12 episodes. The third movie actually is an entirely new story that is a sequel to the Madoka anime, which is completely unnecessary because it's basically just a cash grab. But it does further the story a little. Like, it adds to the story. It doesn't necessarily add good things to it, but it adds to it. Like, I mean, it's still written by the same writer. It's not like the writing quality is super bad. It's just, it's unnecessary. The 12 episodes is fine as is.
Madoka was already a complete story.
Yes.
Right.
Why don't we just finish out the synopsis before we go into this further? So, so Homura starts fighting Walpurgis Night and doesn't defeat it, and then Madoka wants to become a magical girl, but she decides that her wish is going to be that to erase all witches before they come into existence. And because of the reason that Madoka has so much magical power, as it turns out, is because Homura has been going back in time, and every time trying to save Madoka, and in doing so, basically making all these strings of fate converge on Madoka, and making her the strongest magical girl. So her wish comes true, but to fulfill her wish, she would have to become basically a universal law that prevents witches from existing. And doing that basically puts her in a state that isn't part, like, she transcends the universe, basically, and becomes...
Transcends physical form.
Yes, and basically becomes a universal constant that has no beginning and has no end. And basically would be alone for all eternity. So basically like a fate worse than death. and Homura is like hates this, but there's nothing she can do about it. And then the new world is made, and magical girls are still things. They just fight different darkness things instead of witches, and that's how it ends.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed seeing Madoka go all around the world to different magical girls in different time periods and different locations
really
on the
good
Earth.
touch.
That was a nice touch.
Because of course you've been waiting for Madoka to do something, and the first thing she really does is fix the universe. Yes. The first thing she does is fix the universe.
Yes, the first thing she does is break the law of entropy.
Yeah.
Which was when she finally did something, it turned out to be awesome.
Yep. There's really, and I also really liked Madoka going around talking to talking to Sayaka and Kyoko and Mami. Yeah. Because I thought that was really good for like the catharsis of the end of it all, just because like having final words like with Sayaka being like, I could have saved you, but I thought that you would have wanted your wish to still come true. So I would have had to undo this ending where Kamijo gets his hand back. And you wouldn't have wanted that, right? And she's like, yeah, I'm okay with this. And then, like, talking to Mami, and, like, Mami's like, do you know what you've done? Like, this is a pretty big thing. Are you sure you can handle this? And all of that was just, like, really good touches at the end, because it's nice seeing those characters again, because you like the characters, like as horrible as all the things are happening, you still like the characters, and they're all well, like even for the ones that didn't have much screen time, they were still all very well written. And like that's the end of the anime. So, as a whole, what did you think?
On the whole, I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. I probably won't ever watch it again, but it was very well done, and I had some issues with it, obviously, but it was good. I would definitely recommend watching it.
For a reference, what would you rate Steins Gate? I just want to.
I would rate Steins Gate probably a 9.
Okay.
So Madoka Magica is only 0.5 lower.
Yeah.
But I
but
get
again, it's
much more
like
enjoyment out of Steins Gate than I got out of Madoka Magica.
Because Steins Gate, like at least for the first part, it's really fun. And then when it starts getting serious, although no spoilers, we're not spoiling Steins Gate on this podcast episode. But yeah, like when it gets serious, it gets serious. But overall, I would say it has much more humor than Madoka does.
It's not even necessarily humor that I like out of Steins Gate. I just really it's just a lot more fun. Madoka Magica is very, even though it's a magical girl anime, it's very dark and it's very kind of hard to get through.
And that's exactly why I'm not putting it on my favorites list, because I think if like animation, I think is 10 out of 10. Voice acting 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10. Soundtrack 10 out of 10, storyline 10 out of 10. Like all of that put together is just like, I look at it and I just see Madoka is a 10 out of 10 anime for me. But do I like the animation? I think it's amazingly good looking, but I don't necessarily like that style of visual. The voice acting was fine, but I mean, I expect good voice acting. Bad voice acting is what makes me not watch a show. So that's just something I expect. And the soundtrack, well, I can listen to the soundtrack without watching the anime, and which I do. And the storyline is incredibly dark, as we've been talking about, which is not necessarily something that like you can have fun watching repeatedly. That's kind of sick if you would enjoy watching it repeatedly like that. By the way, I've watched it 6 times over. By the way, but like, yeah, I can understand all of that, and that's why it will never be on my favorites list, because while I believe it is one of the best anime that has ever been made, that at the very least that I've seen, there are a lot of older anime that I've not gotten into that I know are quite good, but I've just not taken the time to do. But yeah, no, I think it's really, really excellent. Yeah, Steele, what did you think?
Yes. I should probably start talking eventually, otherwise people might have forgotten what my voice sounds like.
Yeah, so like you're the guest, right? Yeah, like Andrew's my co-host, right? It's the Andrew and Andrew podcast.
Yes, but anyway, personally, I don't believe in like points ratings, especially not for something like this.
Because it's
Like,
subjective.
well, that and also... I don't disagree with anything either of you two have said. It's just... To me, Madoka is legitimately a work of art.
Yeah. I don't think that can be argued. Everything about it is
Wait,
a work
no,
of...
it's not art. What are you talking about? It's definitely not art.
Yes, how can art
How can
be...
anime be art? Oh my
Yes.
god.
How can...
That's
Yeah.
like basically calling video games art. What are you?
What? Video
Yeah.
games aren't art. There aren't artists involved
Madoka-
with that. Video game makers make video games.
Yes, but Madoka is... It is not fun. It is not there to be fun. It is not there to comfort you. Madoka is
No,
an
definitely
experience.
Mhm.
It is an experience.
Definitely. So now I'd like to talk about, before we end, just a few interesting things that I'd like questions that I'd like to pose to you. So, Astiel will jump down your throat if you answer this wrong. Do you?
Oh,
boy.
Because
will I?
first, yes, you will. First, I'm going to ask you this, Andrew: is Kyubey evil?
Inherently, no, but
Yeah,
in terms
good job.
of our world, yes.
Yes, but
Yes.
And I hate the little bastard.
yeah, everybody hates him.
Mhm.
I like posting his emotes for him in chats just to troll people who I know watched it. So the thing is, so Astiel 100% agrees with you, and I agree the same. Kyubey is not inherently evil. In fact,
No.
he's the good guy. If you want to
Yeah.
really look at it in terms of the grand scale of the universe, yeah, he's the good guy. But but definitely not in the story. And the interesting question that I have to pose to you is, now, this is not would the story be better or worse? This is, would the characters have accepted this events better or worse? So would it have been better for the characters in the story if Kyubey was evil, not by human standards but by universal standards?
I've had days to think about this question. I don't think I have a good answer for it.
It's just
Well,
it's an interesting
okay,
philosophical
so-
question.
For him, evil being, he's like an evil mustache twirling just villain, basically, is what you're saying.
Like he's killing them not for the sake of the universe but for fun.
I think would the whole universe thing be irrelevant? Would that not be a
Okay,
thing?
so see, this is what I think it would be. Basically, what I think it is not better. Like Kyubey has to not be evil in the context of the story, because if he was evil, that would mean that the magical girls could band against him and not despair. The fact that Kyubey is ultimately right is what leads to a large majority of the despair that the girls experience.
Yeah, that's basically the answer I came to, is the girls would have an enemy, a common ground to rally against,
To
to support each other with.
The fact that witches are in fact not the enemy; they're just magical girls. Like
Yeah,
that,
I think that would kind of defeat the purpose of the point of the anime if you were.
the
if you
true
were supposed to
point
be
is
evil.
that stuff sucks sometimes. It's just, there really is no bad guy in this story. There's people who do bad things, but they're not doing it for bad reasons, right?
Other than those two guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
those two guys.
were dicks.
Yeah,
I'm
if
afraid.
anyone's the bad guy,
Like I
it's
said,
them.
that's why I'm you don't see it, but I'm convinced Sayaka kills them. I'm convinced of that. Because those guys were horrible people, and maybe they don't deserve death, but that's what I'm pretty sure they got.
A case could be made for that.
Yes, you're right, but that's why, that's what makes Madoka so good, is the fact that a case can be made for that, because you don't actually see. And that's why I think, there's a lot of good moments, basically just, showing and not telling. Basically giving a character backstory
right.
without innately telling you what their backstory is.
Like Kamijo.
Yes, for example, in episode 3, you kind of get this scene of Kamijo being, he's crying, and then you see you see his hand injury, and then you see, some kind of car wreck, and then like him playing violin in a grand hall.
Yeah,
and it's like, you clearly
Yeah.
know, he's been injured and
Yeah.
can't play violin anymore, but they didn't tell you that. You
Yeah, it's
only
the sign
saw it
of,
through
like,
visual.
good writing.
During that entire thing, not a single word is spoken, and you know exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best kind of writing, where you don't have to outright say, oh, this, and this, where you are able to just understand what the writer is telling you just from what's happening.
Yep.
That's great. It's great
Yeah.
stuff.
And okay, so now final point I'm gonna make, because it's kind of just an interesting thing. Did you ever notice the random German writing scrolled on walls at random times?
I think I noticed it. Was it when they were when that group of people was trying to commit suicide? Was there?
It was.
I feel like there
probably there. There definitely when the one woman was about to jump
Yeah.
off a building, it was on the
Yeah,
walls.
I noticed it there too.
Yeah. Are you curious what the German writing is about?
No, I am not curious at all. Please do not tell me. I
Okay,
don't know.
then I won't. Let us continue on with our
No,
merry
I'm just
podcast.
kidding. What was it?
Basically, there's German mythology. Have you heard of Faust?
Yes.
Oh, you have? Well, do you know what is Faust exactly?
I don't remember. I've heard of it though. I know it exists.
Okay, so because I want to be a little bit professional about this, I'm going to actually look it up. So, Faust is the protagonist of a classic German legend. He is a scholar who is highly successful, yet dissatisfied with his life, which leads him to make a pact with the devil, exchanging his soul for unlimited knowledge and worldly pleasures. Do you think maybe there's a reference to Madoka somewhere in that? Or, like, Madoka maybe took a little bit from it? Maybe?
Nah, what makes you think that?
I don't know.
No.
But yeah, so
That's cool though. I like
yeah.
that.
Another small detail, in case you didn't notice, that's not really relevant to anything, but something I want to point out. In the opening scene of the first and second episodes, like from the dream sequence, in Madoka's room, all of the plushies look like Cube. All of them. Until it cuts to a different camera angle. Then they don't anymore. Then they just look like normal stuffed animals.
Well, of course, because it can't be the same twice. That wouldn't make any sense.
Watching you.
And then
is, though.
another thing later is, if you notice that, then later it has like the same cut or same style of cut, except Cube is actually there with the stuffed animal sitting on the shelf.
Yeah. And I guess we'll stop it there. So that's the Who anime podcast.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, we're stopping there.
What does Who stand for those who may not know?
We have opinions.
Indeed we do. So this has been Lobo Kendo and
Astiel?
with our guest. Where's our guest?
He's been abducted.
I'm hiding. Hello. Hi. Yes, I am the guest. Hi.
Hi,
I'm Andrew.
guest.
It's been fun.
It has. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you tune in next week.